all you have to be is one chapter ahead to help somebody. So I think when people are looking at an idea of like, how can I be helping people more? If you're one step ahead, there's something you can teach them.
Hey, I'm Lisa Hugo, and I am obsessed with helping other people find their voices so they can go out and take on the world, be seen as an authority, an expert, and grow their business by sharing that knowledge and expertise with others. Now, I studied performing arts, and I spent 20 years of my career traveling the world as a professional singer-songwriter. I teach you the secrets to speak up and be heard, overcome your fears, and then use these skills to build a business and a life that you love and that could change both your own life and the lives of others. This is your one-stop shop for all things that are going to help you to build a life on your terms. This is Impact Through Voice. Well, welcome back to the Impact Through Voice podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Hugo. And first, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm back in the studio, and today I'm joined by Mark Sclaire. Now, Mark is a sales coach. He's an avid public speaker, and he's an event host. So I'm going to let him introduce himself. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. I always like to start with a little backstory when I know somebody already for a little bit of time. So we met back in 2021, I think it was. We were both at a business conference event over a couple of days, and we connected. And then you invited me onto your podcast after that, and then we've just stayed in tune with each other through social media. And I've really loved what you are doing, the way you're putting yourself out there, and you're using your voice to make a difference both in your own career and your own life, but also to help other people, to motivate them, inspire them, and educate them. So it's such a great synergy to have you on the show. You've been on my radar for quite a while to invite you on, and I'm so glad that we finally got this together.
Great.
Introduce yourself to us.
Great. Well, thank you for the intro, first of all.
You're welcome.
And I really appreciate you introducing me as a sales coach, because I don't want to hide away from the fact that I'm a sales trainer, sales coach, because I work with salespeople to elevate them up and to get them to where they want to be the best that they can actually reach. And a lot of the time we have this internal doubts and worries that I'm a salesperson, people think I'm down here. And for me, I have to say I'm a sales coach because I have to believe in what I'm doing. And I work with them, understand them, and elevate them up to get them to where they need to be.
But tell us a bit more about you, your background, and how did you get into sales? Where have you come from? You're not always been in Dubai. I want a bit more of a backstory from you.
No, great. Okay, we'll go back even further then. So I'm originally from the UK, from Essex. Most people can probably pick up the accents. And I've been here in Dubai since 2008. If I look at what I originally wanted to be, which was before sales, I wanted to be a lawyer. And I went to college, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a criminal lawyer. I wanted to protect people, defend people, stand up for people. And the trouble was I couldn't study. I couldn't revise. I was smart, but I was too smart for my own good. My teacher, I'd start the year off well. Mark, if you keep on with this, you're going to be great. Well, I saw it as I'm great, so I never bothered to revise, study, or do anything. I just, now I learn every day. The difference in how I am is just day and night. But back then, I just couldn't study. So at the time I was at college doing law, politics and sociology. And then I got offered a part-time job with my friends, which was working at a property company, just stuffing envelopes, leafleting, doing a bit of flyering, answering the phone calls. And I started doing that a little bit. And then they offered me another shift. And it was college or actually working at this company. And the thing was, I didn't want to be a salesperson. I was against it, because where I'm from, you're either an estate agent, which is real estate, recruitment, or like wealth management or something. And I didn't want to be that typical person back home.
Okay.
So I had that internal disbelief in myself. But then I started to look at actually what salespeople do and what a lawyer would do. And if you look, you're putting your point across, you're understanding the client, you're solving problems. And if I'm actually able to get people what they need and I can help them, then it's pretty much the same thing. But there is a difference between a salesperson and a sales professional.
Okay.
And a sales professional is what I class myself as. And that is someone that works on themselves every day. They understand what it takes. And you've got those tasks that you need to be doing, that discipline, which you're not going to get results in day one, not even in day two, maybe not even in 6 months. But over time, it's going to compound together, and you'll be offering this service to people where you're competent, you know what you're doing, and you can get people what they need.
I had Spencer Lodge on the podcast a little while back. I think you know him,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he was saying very much the same thing. You know, it can take quite some time. You've got to build your skills. You've got to work on yourself. And it might take a long time before you start to have success. But you mentioned that you didn't like the stigma, I don't want to say that, but the name being a salesperson, because it has a connotation, or people have a mindset already on what that means. Why is that?
Well, people think you're just going to start selling to them. So their guard is up straight away. And this is the problem that salespeople have. They think that once they start calling somebody or speaking to somebody, straight away they have to start pitching. And that's not how it works. It's about understanding. And then when the person in front of you feels that you're not just trying to sell to them, that's when they start to disarm and they start to open up a little bit. So, of course, 100%, that person is going to feel like that. And they should, because the salesperson is trying to sell to them.
It's true.
But if a salesperson understands how they should communicate, then that completely stops. Maybe there's an initial part to it, but then the client or the person starts to realize, actually, this person is listening to me, is engaging with me, he's understanding me. And all of a sudden, it's a great communication that goes on.
It's interesting you say that, because we've just recently instigated a 2-call close for our sales calls. And in that sense, not just the 2-call close, which often goes to a second call where they have to go away and think about it. But we say at the very beginning of the call, look, on this call, we're not going to sell you anything. And we set it up that way from the very beginning. And then even if they still want to buy at the end of the call, we say, I said we're not going to sell you anything. And that's the case today. I know you need some time to go away and think about it. We also need some time to think about whether or not this is going to be a good fit for us to work with you. We've got another 10 calls and we only take a select number of people. And then, so by the time they get on that second call, it sounds like it's really something elite. They still don't know if they're going to be accepted into the program. And that seems to be working a lot better now than the previous methods. I think people's guards are up a lot more nowadays.
Exactly.
What's your feeling on that?
No, I agree with you 100%. So what tends to happen is, as well, when a person is guarded, you're having a surface level conversation and you're not really getting to where the challenges lie and where the problems lie. And as salespeople, our job is to solve people's problems.
That's right.
And if they don't even know what their problems are, you can't have a real conversation. So that initial part is they're opening up a little bit, and that's where you start with an open question, let them start to talk, let them start to communicate. But I faced challenge with this myself, because I had a set of questions written out when I realised I had to start asking questions. And I had them on a sheet, and this was my needs analysis. And I was like, question 1, question 2, question 3. And I wasn't listening to the client. I was so focused on what to ask next.
Right.
And they felt like it was an interrogation. They're like, why are you asking me these questions? So what you have to do as well is you have to set the agenda. How comes I'm asking you questions?
Yes.
What is the reason for this?
Yes.
And then with that, because you're actually listening to the person, you can then dive a bit deeper into the questions rather than going, okay, question 1, question 2, question 3. And again, the whole relationship is about somebody not realizing they need something, you identifying that and helping them to make a decision. Because even though they know they might need it in the end, they still fight with themselves.
That's so true.
Yeah.
There's always the excusitis, the something. It's usually based on fear, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are 4 key reasons why somebody might not choose to go with whatever they actually need it, but they genuinely might need time. They genuinely might need to speak with a spouse and get their finances in order. But very often they say those things, but in actual fact, it's a fear-based response.
Well, it's a smokescreen as well.
A smokescreen.
Because a lot of the time, what they're saying isn't actually really the problem.
Yes.
And us as salespeople, we're accepting it. And then we go onto our CRM, we go, conversation with a client, tick. The manager's happy because you've been making your phone calls. But you're not getting anywhere with it, really. And what a salesperson has to feel, or sales professional has to feel comfortable with, is actually challenging the clients.
Yes.
And that is where, and I hope we'll get onto this, which is like tones that we're using, because the actual tone that you're using with a client is the biggest difference, whether they are offended by what you're saying or if they actually feel genuine that you actually care as well. But again, you have to feel confident enough to challenge the client in a way. So a lot of the time, as I mentioned, like a client doesn't know what their problems are. And you're asked, okay, what current challenges are you facing at the moment? And they'll give you something, but actually, that's actually not the reality. Now, you can't tell the client that that's actually wrong because they've got an ego. And who am I to tell them that they're wrong? Okay. So I have to leave this window and we have to go on this journey. And I give examples of other clients that have been in the same situation. And once they explored it a bit further, they realized actually it wasn't point A, it was actually point C. But then I need to know if they're willing to be open to explore that as well, because they might be guarded still. Especially when I come in to do sales training, the director, I'm a threat. Because all of a sudden I'm going to reveal all these things about they're not doing their job properly, the sales team are not performing. So I have to reassure them that things are going to be okay. And I'm there to help that person so they can get on with what they need to be doing. They weren't hired to be a trainer. They were hired for strategy and implementing. I can assist them to take the burden off of the daily tasks of training so they can get on with what they need to.
Okay, tell us a bit more about the kind of trainings that you do, who you go in and work with, what kinds of clients you work with.
Yeah, so even though I'm a sales coach, I can't teach everybody to sell. Like, I am amazed by when you go into the shopping malls and you're heading towards like Harvey Nicks or Debenhams or wherever, okay? And somebody stops you in the middle. And they're like, well, do you want this perfume or do you want this deep sea or Dead Sea minerals or anything? It's incredible because you have no intention to buy anything and they ended up selling you thousands of dirhams worth of products. Yeah.
Oh, they don't get me.
Well, they don't get you?
Not at all.
Well, the business.
No, thank you.
But they earn absolute fortunes from
Really?
this. I've spoken with some of those companies and it's incredible. I mean, just that retail space to rent is a lot of money. So they've got to be generating something. And the amount of money they take in from it is quite amazing. Because once you get them in, they start seeing the product, start feeling it, testing it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's getting them in.
It's getting them in. And it's that soft approach. Now, I can't help people with that. I can give them confidence to approach people. But where my real skill lies and my experience is what I call consultative selling. So that is sitting with a client like we're doing now, asking questions, understanding about their business. So that's more, it can be B2C because I work with a lot of individuals, but going into a business and taking time and that you have to have patience for as well. You can't just start selling to people. So there's a journey that you go on, asking the questions, the value proposition, presenting. So that's my real core.
Okay.
And companies you can look at for that is like SaaS. You can look at, I work with real estate companies as well.
Okay.
I'm trying to elevate them up because it's such an unethical market. And unfortunately, it's because they're not trained, they're not supported as well. They're just chucked in the deep end.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of mission that I'm on at the moment. But it's sitting with a client. And there's a thing that I've pivoted a little bit recently, which is consultative selling is important, but it's results-based selling, which is outcomes. Yep. What are the communications we're having with people? And there's an old phrase which is features tell, benefits sell.
Features tell, benefits sell.
Yeah.
Yes.
The benefit you're going to be getting from this, you've got to paint that picture for them. Yep. And that's the conversation you want to be having. And unfortunately, we're not learning early on what's important to that person. So when the objections come up, we're not able to handle them because we don't know what the real objections are.
Yeah, I learned that as well. So, when you get to a point in the sales process, let's say, it's not about just listing all the things that they're going to get and all of the deliverables. That's the vehicle that will get them, but it's the end result that they are going to get. That's the most important. And then how they're going to get it, that's the vehicle that will get them there, but it's of less importance. Yeah.
Well, nobody wants to go to the gym every day. Okay, I always use a fitness analogy. No one wants to go to the gym every day, but they want to fit into that dress for the wedding.
Yep.
So that's what you're painting towards.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
Yeah, and that's the feeling that they have to feel that on that day when they arrive and they walk into that room, how they're going to be feeling. All eyes are going to be on them. They've wanted this moment for years and years and years, and I can create that for them. But I have to help them get out their own way, like I mentioned before. And that's with knocking down false beliefs, internally and externally, understanding why they're low in confidence, all of these things. Like, we went on this journey together. Okay, there's a lot of doubts that we've had, and we understood these when we met in 2020. And what I thought was an issue for me actually turned out to be something very different. But I had to go through that journey to understand.
In what sense?
Well, again, if I go back to not feeling proud of being a salesperson, there was another thing as well. Like, my friend would say to me, "You're not an entrepreneur." And I'm like, "Yeah, I am. I can make it. I can do this." And the truth is, I'm not an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I'm not. Even though I've got my business, I don't teach people to be entrepreneurs. That's not what I specialize in. I teach people to work in a corporate company, develop, build a career. And that's how I can help people. So even though I've got my own business, my real experience has been working in a company and having people support and champion me.
So you have your own business, which
Yeah.
does mean you are an
I know.
entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But you're saying you don't really have the mindset of a typical entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'd say that, yeah. But again, when I'm helping people, I'm helping people because of my corporate experience.
Right, got that.
Yeah, so the other day I was asked to speak at a school about doing like a Dragon's Den pitch. And the first thing I said is, that's not what I do. I can help with communication and certain things, but that's not been my experience. So I kind of dismissed quite a few things. But then when we go through a real conversation about it, they're like, no, it's actually, this is where you can help. But I never shy away from saying that's not my strength.
Yeah, but that's good.
Yeah.
I think we have to be true to ourselves and not pretend to offer something and be something that is not our area of skill set. And then if you throw yourself into that, then you're not going to be confident. You're not going to come across as being genuine and an authority in your industry. So it can, come back to bite you.
Well, I think we look at why people invest in coaching, because they need to see that person's done it before as well. A lot of people make this mistake that they take advice from people that have not done it and been through it. Same as like exiting a business. You don't take somebody on as a coach or an assistant or an advisor that's not been through that journey. You want to know that they've been through it, so then they know what steps that you need to take to get there.
It's a bit like also you can have all the degrees in the world. You can be, have studied at university, but if you haven't been out into the business world and you haven't proven it, you haven't done it yourself, then how can you be one to teach it to others if you haven't experienced it?
Yeah. I say knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
We were talking about communication skills, and that's an area that you feel very confident to speak on. Let's talk about communication and inflection of voice and body language and eye contact. What's your take on how that fits into what you teach?
So everything I do is the other person's perspective, how they are feeling whilst I am communicating with them. That's the journey that I go on. So if I'm speaking at an event, I get there, I either case the joint the night before to see everything, or what I do is actually, as the event is going on and there's other speakers, I'll sit in the audience and see what the experience is like for the person in the audience. Because one thing is, if I'm up on stage and I'm tall, so all people are already looking up whilst they're sat down. So like, do they need to look up even further? So maybe a lot of the time I'll just get to their level and won't even go on the stage. I'll go into the middle because that's where I feel that I can connect with people the most. So I go through that part, which is understanding from their perspective. And that's why I say as well, like reassurance. People want to be reassured. They don't want to be told what to do. Yeah. They want to feel like they're being acknowledged. They want recognition, all of these things. So all communication is based around that person. But I can't assume that that's what they're going to be like. So I can have a basic understanding, introvert, extrovert, task-oriented, relationship-oriented, same as building rapport. Some people, they want to talk about a fishing trip and they want to talk about their family for days and days and days. But some people just want ones and zeros.
Yes, true.
And I have to understand that.
Yeah.
In some nationalities or from some countries, people are a little bit weirded out by somebody saying, "How are you today?"
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
there's some places, and for me, it's a general question, but for them, they're like, why are you asking me this?
Yeah.
You know, it's just
Just
not.
get to the point.
Yeah, but from where they're from, that isn't how they communicate. So I have to go on this journey to understand culture, communication.
Yes.
But then if I look at some issues that I have with that, sometimes I can be too thinking of them. And so that kind of stops me from doing something. So I'm assuming that that's what they're going to be like sometimes. So I have to go through that process myself of like, no, just have a conversation. So I'm always trying to pick up on the other person's body language, body techniques, eye contact, and then I have to make sure that I'm making that person feel comfortable.
So if I'd be sitting here,
yeah,
got my arms crossed like this, and I'm looking at you like this, what are you going to do?
Well, it happened in training.
Okay.
And I was worried. And I finally built up the courage to ask the person, like, how comes your arms are crossed? And he looked up and he's gone, the air conditioning. He said, it's freezing in here.
Okay.
Yeah. So all this worry we have that, oh my God, this person's offended by what? Like I've said something wrong. A lot of the time that isn't the case. Sometimes it's nice to rest your arms like this. It's actually quite comfortable. It takes like the support, it supports your shoulders a bit.
Yeah.
So I have to understand that. But even what I'm doing now, we're sat here and I'm leaned back a little bit, okay? If this mic wasn't here, I'd be leaning forwards.
Yes.
So it's this feeling of, in this situation, I would be a bit more upright and leaning in because I want to feel like I'm engaging with you. Yeah. So then I could think to myself, well, does Lisa think I'm being like a bit lazy here, just sat there like this, you know? But then you think, oh, I'll move the mic a little bit. And I have to feel comfortable doing that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's being aware of the person's body language, but then there's also asking yourself the question, like, is that really how they're feeling?
Or even being open to ask them the question, how they are feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had somebody I interviewed recently, just walked up to them at an entrepreneurial festival. I was going around interviewing people.
I saw that. It was very good.
Yeah, I've got a few
really.
more. And this is one of them where the gentleman, he really wanted to be interviewed, but the entire time I was interviewing him, he was rounded over in his shoulders and his arms were crossed like this. And he looked very... like he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to, wasn't confident and didn't feel comfortable. Now, I don't know why, but I did give him that tip at the end because when you are in a public space and you are on camera and then you want to come across as being open and confident.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important that we also understand how we come across. So if you as the interviewer are blocked, then that will be perceived most likely by the person you're talking to as well, this person's got their guard up, and vice versa. What about mirroring?
Well, I was just going to say on the last point there, like you want to say to somebody, are you aware of the actual vibe you're giving off? You know, if you want to not challenge the person, but help the person, you've got to kind of make them feel a little bit uncomfortable at times as well. But then once they're aware of it, then they can manage it.
Yep.
But a lot of people are not aware at all.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, it's this whole thing about staying where you're comfortable.
Yeah.
And people feel that when they get out of their comfort zone and they start to do things which don't feel natural to them, oh, this is fake. I'm not being genuine to myself anymore. But until you stretch yourself, then you're never going to grow.
Yeah, but also as well, I have to be true to myself. Like, as an example, I went to Tony Robbins last year. I was very fortunate. There was an event on for real estate agents, and I got invited down.
Okay.
And he was at the Coca-Cola Arena. There's about 4,000 or 5,000 people there. And what I'm doing is, and we'll go through this with like public speaking, I'm observing and seeing what other people are doing. I'm thinking, can I do something with that? Can I apply that to what I'm doing? And I think he's an incredible person. He's got an amazing energy, amazing aura about him. But I don't get people up dancing. Okay. I just don't get them do it because it's not true to who I am. Okay. I see the value in it, and I see that it breaks the sort of pattern, you know, because you get up, you start dancing around, and I enjoyed it a little bit. But for me to ask people to do that, it's not true to who I am.
Okay. So
one of the first things I say is, like, when I'm doing my training, I'm not going to get you up dancing. What I am going to get moving is this. The brain. And this is what's going to be tired afterwards, because I'm going to put questions up on the boards. You're going to have to be thinking about it. It's going to get you out of your comfort zone. But what I hope is, as a facilitator, which is what I call myself, we'll communicate within ourselves and we'll start solving problems as a team together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I'm not saying that we should all get up and be, one particular style of presenter or one particular style of coach or salesperson. I think we're all very unique and we're all individual and we all have our own style and we should stick to that. But what I am saying is that if you want to grow, you want to improve, you want to develop, then you have to stretch yourself to a stage of being uncomfortable until that becomes comfortable for you.
True.
And that's what I tell my clients all the time. They say, oh, but this feels so strange. Yeah, it feels strange because you haven't been doing it like this before. But do it for a little while and all of a sudden it will feel natural for you. Yeah.
And then before you know it, you're thinking to yourself, why did I ever think this was a problem? It just becomes natural,
Yeah, and it becomes second nature. It becomes a new muscle memory.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about body language. What about voice?
Yeah, so this is a journey I've been on as well, because when I do my training, there's the 3 Ds, and it's quite interesting actually. I learned this last week. And again, you can say that you've been doing it, but actually to have a system and steps in place. So there's documenting, there's demonstrating, and then there's duplicating. So if you ask me how to train salespeople, you'd ask me to document it. And then I've got to demonstrate it to you. And a lot of the time, the way that you demonstrate it's very different to how you've documented it now. You're like, well, that's actually not how I would do it.
Okay.
And then you want the other person to duplicate it.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, when I'm training people, I've got an idea of what you should be saying, but I need to put it into a system. So I go on a journey of understanding what other people are doing. So I came across this guy called Jeremy Minor.
Oh, I know Jeremy,
Yeah. So again, I like to acknowledge people that I've learned from. Again, it's something which I know, but he puts it in such a way in a system. I think it's great.
Yeah, he's great.
So he talks about the 5 tones. And one thing I really love is the difference between a challenging and like a curious or a concerned.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you're coming across with a challenging tone and you're not aware of this, but you're trying to help somebody, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he does some great examples, and then I ask people in the training to show me your concerned tone and your playful tone and your challenging tone, and then with the inflections in those as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's the realization that they have when we record it, when we show it, it's just, well, I never realized that I spoke like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, that's exactly what I'm working with people on so much, about the voice and how our different elements in our voice, your pitch, your pace, your melody, your volume, and your tonality. Yeah. And there's different types of tone. The tone is also, how do you come across? Do you come across as aggressive? Do you come across as joyful, happy, interested, sad? But then there is also tone, as in what kind of voice type do you have?
Yeah.
Do you sound nasal when you're speaking? Do you have this gravelly, crackly voice? That is a different kind of tonality for me as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And they're all areas that you can work on, you can improve on. And most people, when they speak, they don't listen to their own voices. No. They don't have a perception of how they come across to other people, because we just speak. Unless you've been trained, you've learnt it, you've been trained in voice or voiceovers or radio or acting, or to use it in your job. So
or just actually listening to your voice.
Yeah.
I ask people, like the biggest issue that salespeople face is they don't listen to their own phone calls or conversations. 90, it's still a high number, over 90% of salespeople have never listened to their own calls.
That's shocking.
But they listen to a 5-minute voice note that they've sent to somebody and replay it back, But so you've got your tone, but then you've actually got, are you giving people space to speak? Are you interrupting? What's the percentage of you talking to the other person talking? So there's that part of it as well. And then one big one, when you talk about the tone, and I'm helping my friend at the moment because he's doing a presentation next month, and he sent back the recording of the presentation, and everything that he says is a question. That's how it sounds.
Uptalk.
That's how it sounds. But he doesn't mean to sound like he's getting to this higher pitch at the end, and it sounds like he's not sure about it.
Yes.
And I think that's the first problem the mistake we make, isn't it? We try to sound like we're emphasizing stuff at the end with this higher finish, and it's not helping. So, but then you go another extreme, which is become like a monotone. Yeah, but I'd love to hear more about it. From what you
So
speak about.
what you're talking about is an uptalk. And it happens a lot more with young people nowadays. It's very prevalent in Australia and the culture in Australia, where the young people, hi, everybody, my name's Lisa. Oh, isn't it so good to be here? I'm so happy.
Oh, God. Yeah.
But I had this also with a client just last night as well. Hi, my name is Dr. So-and-so, and I work in this field, and I've been in the UAE for 17 years, and so it's almost like you're checking off a list where I go to the shops, I buy bread, I buy milk, I buy soda, and then I'll get the rice, and I'm done. And so you always finish with the last one, and your voice will go down. But it becomes a pattern. It can become a habit, and you don't realize that you're doing it. It can also come through lack of confidence, which you said, it sounds like you're lacking confidence because it sounds like you're questioning everything that you say. And I always say, when people introduce themselves, you often hear, hi, my name is Lisa. Hi, my name's Lisa.
Yeah,
it sounds so much more confident. Yeah.
I think in most conversations that I see, especially with like podcasts as well, we all start like that, and then we get into it a little bit, and then we start to calm ourselves a little bit, and then all of a sudden we're speaking in that sort of way. Once we're actually able to calm down a bit, but some people are just irate the whole time, and they've never got comfortable.
I mean, there's so many different traits in speaking which can take away from the message. And you also talked about the tone. Well, monotone is very clear, where we're only going to be speaking like this for an entire podcast, and then people will just naturally switch off, and because you're not doing something different with your voice, or you're constantly speaking without finding a full stop. And a pause.
And I'll tell you something funny as well. So when I started to speak quite a lot in public, people would say to me, Mark, I really love your verbal pausing. I really love that you give space between a sentence and then going on to the next one, or even mid-sentence stopping. And I was like, it's not happening because I want it to happen. I'm actually trying to think of what to say. So my brain is going slower than what I should be speaking. But thank God I don't say ums and ahs.
I was just going to say, you don't use ums and ahs at all in your speaking.
Yeah. So again, like even the word and as well, and that's a nice filler word as well, I find, moving on to the next thing. But with the pausing, it's literally because I'm trying to think of what to say, but I'm not saying ums and ahs. So I'm allowing for the space to be quiet, but that's okay because I value myself. And I value the other person, and if I have time to think about it, then I can actually help them as well.
Have you had to train yourself into this to allow the space and not fill the space with noise, which is unnecessary?
So there was this stopgaps, the stopgaps. That's these filler words. And I always tell this story, but working in a sales company, in an office, in a property company, there was 4 of us in this room, not much bigger than this, and I had my director there, and I always said, I can speak in front of her, and I can speak in front of my dad, I can speak in front of anybody. That's how I felt. Friday night at dinner table with my dad, no problem. Nowadays, back then it was fearful. In this sales office with Kate, my old director, sat there. She was probably my best manager that I had, but I was answering the calls and making phone calls, and I would say, well, to be honest with you. And now when you're hearing it once or twice, it's okay. But when you're sat in the office, you're making 100 calls a day, and you're saying, to be honest with you, all of a sudden I've got something thrown at my head. And she threw something at me. She goes, stop saying to be honest. And I said, well, what should I say then? She goes, well, say to be fair. So then I start saying to be fair. Next thing, something else is thrown at me. So now what I do is I really try to make this conscious effort of allowing for the pause. And I think it allows for a better in-depth response as well, rather than trying to respond quickly and never really getting to actually the value that you're trying to give as well.
And these repetitive phrases, they come up. My daughter also says frequently, well, in my opinion. I said, stop saying in my opinion, you don't realize it. But like you just said, come up with something different so that you have alternatives to use instead. And that can change it completely.
Yeah, the reason why we're saying it is because we're trying to think of what to say. So when somebody will say, oh, that's a good question, and then they're going to respond, that moment of saying that's a good question, that gives them that extra 1 second to think of the response. But I saw a Steve Jobs video the other day, And this person said, like, what is your biggest lesson from when you were at Apple to next?
Mm-hmm.
And he literally stopped for like 15 seconds, it must have been. And he really, really, really thought about it. And then he responded. Now, he could have easily just come up with a easy response and it would have moved on. But the response was so great. And it was in regards to hiring people and what he expected from them. And what he learned was that people are going to make mistakes. But when you're building for the future, do you see that they can learn from that, from the mistake, and maybe become the best employee that he's ever had? And a lot of the time when he changed that mindset of just, oh, they're useless, so I'm going to fire them, which is what he used to do, he actually started to work with them and understand them more. And then they became like the most important part of the business.
Mm.
But that response wouldn't have come if he just would have responded straight
True.
back. And we never would have learned that properly.
Yeah. So having the confidence to take that time to think through what you want to say before you say it, rather than speaking and then trying to put it together as you say it.
But this is why I hate these 60-second clips.
Let's talk about what you mean by 60-second clips. So basically the elevator pitch or...
Well, not even that, just a video which you see online.
Okay.
And it's literally somebody is speaking and it's boom, 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 boom. They've cut all the ums and ahs, they've cut all the fillers, they've cut all the gaps, and it's just this response back. And how is somebody meant to absorb that information? That's why I love doing like long form like we're doing now. Yes, we can clip something up and there'll be some really good sound bites here, I've got no doubt about that. But if somebody actually listens to our full conversation, and they will dive deep into it, and because we're taking the time to speak in this sort of way, they can actually register it better. Because I'm telling you now, people flick through and they go through these videos and they'll get something for 60 seconds, but it's not taking the impact properly. I truly believe that.
But the problem is the attention span is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And so that is what, especially the younger generation, they're just absorbing these 60-second clips, move to the next one, 60-second clips, but they do retain it. And I've got teenagers who are almost 19 and 17, and they can retell you, what's happening in the world because they get their news and their information about what's happening in the world from what they watch on TikTok, on Instagram.
But it's a headline. It's a headline. And a lot of these headlines, then it's not even really actually what is meant to be going on. So then if you ask a person to actually, tell me about what's going on there, they can give you a surface level response, but they're not diving deep.
Oh, that's true.
So what's nice is you'll have this is where you now go on a journey. You'll watch a 60-second video and you'll be like, that's really interesting. Let me go and check the full thing out.
Yes.
If that's happening, that's great. But if you're literally absorbing information like that and then you're thinking that you're an expert in something, it's just not the case. You've got a little conversation topics to talk about, which is nice as well. But once somebody starts to go a bit deeper, you get found out. You get found out you're not an expert in that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Have you noticed, talking about younger people, do you work with younger people?
I work with younger people.
Yeah.
I mean, how young are we looking at?
Well, I'm talking sort of the Gen Z. Oh, actually, I'm terrible with which ones. Which millennials, Gen Z comes next, I think, coming into the workforce. The younger generation who are starting to come into the workforce now.
Yeah.
Do you notice a difference in mentality?
Definitely. But then there's understanding like how to get them to go on the journey. So there's a doctor which I was speaking to like 6 months ago, and they did this great thing around Emiratisation for the finance industry. They're trying to bring in Emiratis to work more in the finance industry. They're trying to grow it, okay? And what he was looking at was ways that the people could really actually come to work and want to be there and want to grow and want to develop. And what he understood was that the way he had to pitch it was, you've got these directors which are in roles which have been doing it for 10, 15 years. When you do this course, it will take 2 years. And that hooks them in, and then they're in. Okay. So that is like, what is the end thing they're going to get from this? And that he has found to be a really great return, because the thought that people have with Emiratis, which is not true at all, especially today, is that they just come in, collect a wage, but they don't. There's so many Emiratis that I engage with, young people that feel a purpose and a mission to kind of represent the UAE, and that's really great to see.
Yeah, I know many who have that exact persona and mindset and belief and
that feeling,
way about them. Yeah. That's brought it pretty much full circle, where you talk about the end result. What is the end result? The 2 years, what are they going to get out of that?
Yeah.
And that then gives you the desire to want to get there.
And it's not taking 10 years.
Yeah.
Which is what they're looking at.
Yeah, exactly.
They're looking at someone that's been in it for 10 years. They're like, I don't want this. It shouldn't take me 10 years. And the truth is, it probably shouldn't. There's probably a smarter way to work to get there, to get the degree. Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole nother topic, smarter ways to work, automations. But okay, do you have any recommendations for reading books?
Yes. So if I look at something which really made a difference to me, one is a book called Life of Pi. Mm-hmm. Okay, now
heard of it, I haven't read it.
Okay, so you might have seen pictures of like a tiger in a boat with a boy, and you're like, well, what is this about? Okay, and
there was a movie about it.
Exactly,
yeah.
But it was the first book that I read before watching the movie, because I never used to think Harry Potter was good, Lord of the Rings was good. I was like, why would you bother to actually read books like that? Like actually learn business and get on with it, like entrepreneurs and stuff.
Okay.
But then I read Life of Pi, and then I watched the movie, and I was like, the book is 10 times better.
It usually is the case, isn't it?
But this is it. But and that was my realization. You go on this journey during the book, and they're so descriptive with what it's doing, and you feel like you're there, and then you watch the movie.
Yeah.
So that if I look at something to make me more creative, that book was definitely something which had an impact on me, and that was probably about 3-4 years ago I read that book. Yeah. And then if I look at things which helped me with what I'm doing, one thing is Zig Ziglar. Mm-hmm. Okay, who's a coach, a sales coach, and he's written a book called See You at the Top, and he does such amazing stories. Storytelling for me is such an important thing.
Oh yeah, we didn't get onto that today, but
his tone, and he's this old boy from Dallas, and the way he talks and engages is just brilliant. Same as with Les Brown as well, with the storytelling. So those are a book called See You at the Top, and then there is a book called Catch Me If You Can, which is the book for Frank Abagnale, who was the guy that was on the run from the FBI, and he used to write all these fake checks, and he used to get all this money, cash all the checks. The movie with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And what I learned from that is, and there's a really great part in it, because people think they can't help people. Okay, but he says something great when he's being interviewed. He says, all you have to be is one chapter ahead to help somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when people are looking at an idea of like, how can I be helping people more? If you're one step ahead, there's something you can teach them.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah. That's great advice to finish off with today.
Thank you.
For all you entrepreneurs who want to get out there, you only have to be one step ahead, or let's say, 10 steps ahead, one chapter ahead. I like that.
Yeah. Because in the movie, he teaches a classroom, and there's students there, and he's the same age as them.
Yeah.
And the way he was able to do it was he had the textbook from the class, and in school you just read one chapter. Mm-hmm. So he read one chapter more.
Yep.
And he was ahead of everybody. Yeah. He could teach the last chapter to them.
Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, Mark, we have to cut it short. It's been so good having you on the podcast. I'm going to have you back. I think we have to have a part 2.
Let's do it. I'll be happy to come back. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Impact Through Voice podcast. Now, if you've reached the end of this episode, then it means you're enjoying the podcast. So I have a quick favor to ask. If you haven't yet subscribed, please go and do it now, and even leave us a review, because it really does help us so much to reach more people and impact more people. And I would be very, very grateful. Now, I love to read all of your comments about the show and what you're enjoying, what you would like to hear more of. So please take the time and go and do that now. When you do that, please take a screenshot and then tag me on Facebook or Instagram. That's Lisa Hugo Official. Now, I'm going to be sure to share your post, and I'm also going to private DM you with a thank you. And it also means you won't miss an episode. And as a subscriber, then you're going to get access to more content that we don't even open up to everybody. So thanks again. And until next time, keep on working towards your goals and making a positive impact on the world with your voice.